Part 2. And now I'm going to be telling you about Pokemon Crystal. Pokemon Crystal was an enhanced version of Gold and Silver, which was released in Japan December 14, 2000, and released in the US July 29, 2001. The difference is basically, unlike the original Gold and Silver versions, when you encounter a Pokemon in the wild or engage into a battle, the pixelated images of the Pokemon are animated. The story is basically the same as Gold and Silver, with legendary beast Suicune now playing a prominent role in the storyline than in the originals. Awakening the legendary beast trio Suicune, Entei, and Raikou are now required in order to challenge the fourth gym leader, Morty. Suicune is encountered at various locations throughout Johto. After receiving a clear bell in lieu of the Rainbow Wing from Gold or the Silver Wing from Silver version, Suicune will appear stationarily at the Tin Tower. The mystical man you've seen is introduced in the game, and his goal is searching for Suicune, and he will battle the player in Cyanwood City in order to gain Suicune's respect. When the Crystal version was released, it was well received by the critics, although many commented that they were just not enough new additions and features to significantly set it apart from Gold and Silver. Craig Harris from IGN stated, "The final, hopefully, Game Boy Color edition is definitely the version to get if you aren't already one of the upteenth 6 billion owners of the previous games, with Crystal slight updates of the design and graphics, but there's not much in this edition that makes it a must-buy for the folks who already own a copy or two of the previous editions." Gamespot nominated Pokemon Crystal for its annual Best Game Boy Color Game Award, which went to The Legend of Zelda, Oracle of Seasons, and Oracle of Ages. The Australian Nintendo Gamer magazine gave the review an 88 out of 100, praising for the game's improvements from Gold and Silver, including the option to choose either a male or a girl trainer, enhanced graphics, more animated battles, and improved location navigation and stating. The main map and the features of the game remain the same, but they are enough little differences to make it a worthwhile addition to your Pokemon game collection. The Crystal version was also one of the second best-selling Game Boy Color games in Japan, with 1,871,307 copies sold. It sold nearly 6.4 billion units worldwide. And now the next game I'm going to be telling you about is Ruby and Sapphire. Now, Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire came out in 2002 in Japan, while they came out in the US here in March 19, 2003. The gameplay is mostly unchanged from the previous games. The player controls the main character from an overhead perspective. Controls are largely the same as the previous games. As with the previous games, the main objective is to catch all of the Pokemon in the games, defeat all the 8 gym leaders, collect their 8 gym badges, and defeat the Elite Four, just like the last versions. And the game's main subplot involves the character defeating a criminal organization that attempts to take over the region. It features double battles, Pokemon abilities and natures, and 135 new species added. Owing to the increased capabilities of the Game Boy Advance, 4 players can also be connected to each other at a time instead of a previous limit of 2. And in addition, they were also connected to an e-reader or a 3rd generation Pokemon games. Ruby and Sapphire take place in the Hoenn region, which is located some distance from Kanto and Johto, featured from the previous versions of the games. The design of Hoenn is based on the Japanese island of Kyushu. However, Hoenn is rotated 90 degrees relative to Kyushu, And Junichi Masuda, the music composer to the games, felt that it would provide a better gameplay balance. Like Kyushu, Hoenn possesses many small islands, and a part of the region is dominated by the sea route, several of which are containing areas where the player can go and dive underwater. The storyline is basically the same as Red and Blue, Yellow, and Gold, Silver, and Crystal. The main events occur in a fixed order. The protagonist, a male or female trainer, is the child who recently moved to a small town called Littleroot Town, and at the beginning of the games, the player chooses either Trico, a grass type, Torchic, a fire type, or Mudkip, a water type, to protect Professor Birch, the regional professor, from an attacking wild Poochyena. And after defending the professor, the player was then taken to his laboratory and receives the chosen Pokemon as your partner. And after the player encounters May and Brendan, the child of Professor Birch, and the rival, who appears as the professor's child, is also a Pokemon trainer and occasionally battles the player for different times in the game. The game's two main objectives is to defeat the 8 gym leaders, collect their 8 gym badges, and proving oneself worthy of challenging the Elite Four and Champion to become the new Pokemon League Champion, and completing a Pokédex by capturing, evolving, and trading all the 202 Pokemon available between Ruby and Sapphire. It is possible to obtain all 386, but this requires trading from the Red and Blue remakes. In addition to the main quest of defeating the gym leaders, there are side quests in which the player can aid the non-playable characters by fulfilling tasks and usually obtaining items. The most prominent subplot involves Team Aqua and Team Magma, two crime syndicates who use Pokemon to alter the climate of Hoenn. If you're playing the Ruby version, Team Magma wants to use the legendary Groudon to dry up the oceans of Hoenn region and increase the region's landmass. Or if you're playing the Sapphire version, Team Aqua are the villains, and they try to use the counterpart Kyogre to flood the landmass of Hoenn and increase the region's ocean. Prior to facing the final gym leader, the player will have a showdown between Magma or Aqua, determining what versions you're playing, where the team's leader uses the mystical orb that awakens the legendary slumbering Pokemon, believing it'll have the power to enthrall the respective target, only for this Pokemon to become enraged and cause a catastrophic region-wide climate change, a drought in Ruby version, or the heavy rainfall in Sapphire version, until it is defeated or captured by the player. The player's father, the gym leader, also introduces them to Wally, a sickly young boy whom the player helps capture his first Pokemon, a Ralts, to be his companion as he moves away from a big city. Wally eventually overcomes his illness and becomes a successful trainer, ultimately becoming the final challenger before the player must face against the Elite Four. When the games came out, they received mostly positive reviews, though the critics were divided in their assessment of the games, especially on the gameplay and graphics. Most of the complaints focused on the game not changing much in relation to the previous generations, and connectivity issues various past generations of the series. With over 16.22 billion copies sold, they were a commercial success and became the best-selling games for Game Boy Advance. However, with popularity of Pokemon waning at the time, that game sold over less than previous generations, with Red and Blue having sold nearly 31 million units worldwide, and Gold and Silver selling over 23 million units. The next is Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, the remakes of Red and Blue. The storyline is basically the same as Red and Blue, but it introduces a new region called the Sevi Islands, where you have to go on different types of missions where the player discovers Lorelei in her house and convinces her to come back with them. And once more, during the Sevi Island story, they had to battle against Team Rocket and thwart their plans on several occasions and recover the two artifacts, the Ruby and Sapphire, and put them in a main computer to one island. And after that, the trainer may be able to trade with many Pokemon that are found in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald if you have the wireless adapter. When the two games came out for the Game Boy Advance in September 9, 2004, and in Japan, January 29, 2004, they were mostly received positive reviews, obtaining an aggregated score of 81% on a Metacritic. Most critics praised the fact that these games introduced new features while still maintaining the traditional gameplay of the series. The reception of the graphics and audio were more mixed, with some of the reviewers complaining they were too simplistic and lacked the improvement compared to the previous versions, Ruby and Sapphire. Fire Red and Leaf Green were a commercial success, selling a total of around 12 million copies worldwide. And nearly 2 years after their original release, Nintendo remarketed them as the Player's Choice titles. The next version is Pokemon Emerald, an enhanced version of Ruby and Sapphire. The main difference in the game is that the storyline is basically the same as Ruby and Sapphire, with the Pokemon that you encountered in the wild and in battle are animated like in the Crystal version. And also, after you defeat the Elite Four, there are capability that you can encounter either the two legendary Latios and Latios, and you are able to access an area called the Battle Frontier, which adds new challenges to the player. The player may also gain access to battle the former champion of the Elite Four, Steven Stone, in Meteor Falls, who uses a powered-up version of his team from Ruby and Sapphire. And when the games came out, its reception had received positive reviews upon its release. It received generally positive reception, holding an aggregated score of 76 out of 100 and a 76.65% on Metacritic and game rankings respectively. It received an award for excellence at the 9th annual CESA Game Awards. IGN's Craig Harris stated that while he was not enthused by Emerald, he admitted that it was a solid game and it was the best version to get for people who haven't played Ruby and Sapphire yet. OneUp.com's Christian Nutt felt that it was a definitive version of Pokemon at the time, yet was also a rehash. GameSpot's Phil Theobald felt that it was a great game on its own right, but felt like the same game as Ruby and Sapphire. GameSpot's Ryan Davis noted it was a quality experience despite being similar to Ruby and Sapphire, and that the hardcore fans may appreciate its changes. Eurogamer's Corey Brotherson felt that it was a great game in its own right, but was lacking compelling additions. He added, however, that it was a better game for the players new to the series. Nintendo Life's Lori Blake performed a retroactive review of the game. She felt that the Pokemon games have aged well, but still feel like they did in 1996. She further stated that the similarities between it and Ruby and Sapphire prevented it from being a must-have while still being good. All Games' Julia Regis felt that the games have a lot of value for the players, but the old players may be disinterested. She compared Nintendo's remakes to the Pokemon games to the various Star Wars remakes. IGN's Audrey Drake praised the game for utilizing both the villain groups and marked it as a marked departure from Ruby and Sapphire. She felt the ability to re-battle the gym leaders created an exciting challenge for players. She also included Emerald alongside Ruby and Sapphire in a list of Game Boy Advance games that she wanted to see on the Nintendo 3DS eShop. OneUp.com's IGN's Lucas M. Thomas bemoaned the fact that he had played through the whole game before he could play the Battle Frontier. Jeremiah Parrish listed Emerald as one of the best games to bring onto a plane. Fellow OneUp.com editor Kat Bailey included it on a list of remakes that left the originals in dust. She praised Battle Frontier and its fixes for flaws found in Ruby and Sapphire.